Good morning and welcome to the Industrial Energy Transformation Fund briefing event. My name is Jenny McDonald from the Knowledge Transfer Network, and I'm chairing this webinar today on behalf of BEIS and Innovate UK, ably assisted by my colleagues Jonathan Abra and Natasha Sim. Now, before we get started on today's presentations, just to take you through a little bit of housekeeping that hopefully will ensure today's online experience is as good as possible. On YouTube, you will be muted for the duration of the event, so please use the chat box in YouTube to ask any questions that you have about the competition as you watch the presentations this morning. It would also be really useful if you could state which of the two competitions your question refers to, because each is slightly different, and so the answer will be slightly different. So if you could just say whether you're looking at the studies competition or the deployment competition when you type your question into the YouTube chat box. Also, we're not taking questions about specific project ideas today. We would like you to save your detailed project idea questions for the one-to-one sessions that will happen at the end of today's webinar. But if you have a question, a general question about the scope or eligibility or the competition process itself, then feel free to type a Q&A question into the chat box and we will put that to our presenters at the Q&A session. Now, there's no substitute for a live event in terms of networking, but we want to try and see what we can do virtually through the YouTube channel. So please, why don't you introduce yourselves, name and organisation, and maybe what interest you have in this programme today. We have 381 people registered for today's event, so I'm sure that there will be people online with you today that might be perfect partners for your project. So please introduce yourselves and do a little bit of networking, whilst keeping in mind that it is YouTube, so it is a public platform. Today's event is being recorded and you will be sent a link to the recording along with the presentation slides and a link to the competition pages after today's event, so that you can share it with colleagues and watch back. And finally, as I mentioned just a moment ago, if you have a question about your particular project idea or any questions that you didn't get a chance to ask during the Q&A, we have organised one-to-one discussions which you can have with BEIS, Innovate UK or myself via the Meeting Mojo platform. So this was the networking platform. You will have received a link to join the networking platform when we confirmed your registration for this event. So if you haven't already registered, you can register at that link, which is the same one that's on the bottom of the slide now. The meetings will take place once the event has finished from 12:45 to 2:30 today. And they are 10-minute chats that you can have with either the BEIS people, Innovate UK people or myself about any questions you have on the competitions. So now looking at today's agenda, well, this is the welcome. Following the welcome, I'll be handing over to Tricia Allen from BEIS. Tricia is Head of Policy and Engagement at BEIS, and she will be setting the scene for today's event, talking a little bit about the policy and strategy that has led to this funding being made available for you today. We will then have a presentation from Julia Schumacher, who's the Innovation Lead for Clean Growth and Infrastructure at Innovate UK. Julia is also the Competition Lead for the IETF, and she'll be talking about the scope of the two competitions and a general overview of the programme. The first of our Q&A sessions then takes place. So any questions that you have relating to those two presentations, I will put to the presenters at that point. So don't wait until we get to 10:45. As soon as you think of a question, pop it into the chat box in YouTube, and my colleague Jonathan Abra, who is your moderator today, will copy that across to me so that I can put your questions to the speakers at the Q&A. We then have a presentation from Rachel Evans and Victoria Meredith from Innovate UK's competition team. and they'll be talking you through the nitty-gritty of actually applying to the competition. So some of the eligibility rules, a walkthrough of the IFS system, which is the online system that will allow you to apply, and they will take you through all of that. We then have our second Q&A session, where you'll again be able to put questions to any of the three presentations that you'll have seen this morning, before we then have a comfort break at 11:45. After the break, you will hear 9 pitches from companies, organisations that have an interest in applying to this competition. They're going to share a 2-minute pitch on their skills and expertise that makes them an ideal partner for you to talk to. And then finally, I will give a presentation on the application support service, which is provided by the KTN to applicants to help them with partnering and proposal reviews. And we'll wrap up at 12:30 with closing remarks from Tricia. We'll then move on to the Meeting Mojo platform. So YouTube is completely finished then. We go on to Meeting Mojo, and anyone that has booked a one-to-one meeting with BEIS, Innovate UK or the KTN will have those meetings through Meeting Mojo, and I'll explain a little bit more about how you go about that at the first break. So that's today's event. I hope you will find all of our presentations useful. I would now to hand over to Tricia Allen to take you through the first presentation. Tricia.
Thank you very much, Jenny. I hope everybody can hear me. I believe our videos are a little bit slow to catch up, so I think I may be frozen at the moment, but it should start moving quite soon. So welcome everybody, and thank you very much, Jenny, for your introduction just now. I believe we've had over 600 people enrolled to participate at both today's event and last week's webinar, which is really fantastic to see so much interest in the fund. We're really looking forward to some excellent conversations and engagements from across industry. Joining me today from BEIS, we also have Lily Tozer and Daisy Mather. Lily and Daisy will be helping out with some of the questions as we go through, so I may call on them later on. So I'd like to thank them for joining me today. So I'll be giving a presentation now about the overall industrial net zero policy. And as you've just heard, we have a variety of speakers from Innovate UK who will be going into the practical details about the fund. Innovate UK are our delivery partners, so we're working very closely with them throughout. Thank you. So if we go on to the next slide, thank you very much. So just to create the context for where this fund has come from, this is an overview of our net zero policies, which hopefully is a term familiar to everybody listening at the moment. In June of last year, the UK government set a legally binding target to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions for across the UK economy by 2050. And this was achieved by strengthening the targets that we already had in the Climate Change Act from 2008, which had set a target of 80% reduction. So it was a more ambitious target. We were the first major economy in the world to commit to a net zero contribution to climate change, and we aim to continue leading through our hosting of the COP26 event next year. So business and industry emissions account for around 25% of total UK emissions, of which a significant proportion of these come from manufacturing processes. Just to give you some perspective, this is about the same amount of emissions that we currently get from transport across the UK. I think that's around 23–24% as well. So for manufacturing to reach net zero by 2050, industrial emissions are going to need to fall by as much as 95% relative to today's levels. This is basically a similar challenge to converting the whole of the UK's transport fleet to zero emission vehicles, or alternatively, replacing all our vehicles with walking, cycling and clean public transport. So I hope that gives you some idea of just how ambitious a challenge this is. We're going to need industry to change, but we also do need industry to remain internationally competitive. We need to make sure that we don't actually lose the opportunities that we can provide to be a global leader in the process of actually converting to net zero. And we do believe that is possible to achieve the economic and environmental goals in a productive way. Just to also give you some context, the current contribution of industry to the UK economy is around £170 billion a year, supporting over 2 million jobs. So it's a very significant part of our economy. So what are we doing? So the UK government is building a policy framework that is designed to support industry to invest in decarbonisation and to take advantages of the opportunities available to bring about the green industrial revolution we're going to need to achieve net zero. And I think there's a really important message around industry in terms of the lifetime of the equipment that everybody uses, in that a lot of equipment has a 20 to 30 year lifespan. So when we're talking about 2050, that's actually only one replacement away for a lot of kit. So we're talking about once in a generation decisions that need to be made, in some cases, in the next few years, which will still be in place by 2050. So we're very much taking a long-term view on what investment priorities need to be made in this context. I think we'll go on to the next slide, if that's okay. Thank you. So here's a very quick overview of what the UK government is doing to bring about the scale of decarbonisation we believe is needed in the industrial sector. So first and foremost, we're investing in opportunities to bring about the sort of policy changes that I've been describing. And the opening of phase 1 of the Industrial Energy Transformation Fund, which is now open today for applications, is a very big opportunity, but it's only one of several opportunities available. The IETF is one of a multi-billion pound investment programme, which BEIS is delivering with other departments across government to achieve industrial decarbonisation. Just a little taste of some of the other funds that BEIS is running, in which the IETF sits in a context with. We also have the Transforming Foundation Industries programme, which is £66 million to support manufacturing industries to achieve resource efficiencies. We have the Carbon Capture and Storage Infrastructure Fund. We also have the Low Carbon Hydrogen Production Fund, and we have the Energy Innovation Programme. So that's just a little flavour of some of the programmes that we have, all designed to help industry on their path towards net zero. So alongside this, we're obviously designing a wider policy framework to make sure all these funding decisions are actually in a combined direction to support industrial decarbonisation. We're currently developing a long-term policy framework to show what that would look like to achieve decarbonisation whilst remaining internationally competitive. So the second focus of our work is around clusters, which many of you may have already heard about. We're prioritising these strategically important clusters, of which there are 6 across the country. Over half the industrial emissions that I mentioned earlier in this presentation are concentrated in just 6 clusters. So we're prioritising opportunities to fund change in those clusters. We have £170 million going into the Industrial Strategy Challenge funding, and this is designed to support the deployment of low carbon technologies and enabling infrastructure and the development of cluster decarbonisation roadmaps. It's worth saying, however, that the Industrial Energy Transformation Fund is not restricted to just the clusters. So if you operate outside of the locations of those clusters, that's not a problem. So our third area of work is to invest in the pathways that industry could take to reach net zero. We're exploring the creation of a market for low carbon industrial products and assessing what skills are going to be required to achieve net zero. And this is all part of our initiatives to build the right market to create change as rapidly as possible. And we're also very keen to make sure that we do all of this work as collaboratively as possible with industry to make sure that we're building the right policies for change. So we put a high focus on listening and engaging and consulting wherever appropriate. So we recently published the government's response to the new UK emissions trading scheme. This was published in June. Many aspects of policy development to improve proposals before they're launched. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. So just a very brief introduction for the Industrial Energy Transformation Fund. I'm sure many of you may have already looked at the resources online, but just to give you the real headline messages about what the fund is about. It was set up to support businesses with high energy use to cut their bills and reduce carbon emissions. So we have 2 objectives. And the first one is to reduce any energy costs and emissions for industry. The second objective is to find ways to bring down the costs and risks of deep decarbonisation technologies by demonstrating these technologies. And this is very much where the transformation comes in. So the fund will support the deployment of energy efficiency and deep decarbonisation technologies and demonstration at scale. And it is designed to complement other government funds to make sure that where there's funding for innovation and demonstration, we fit into a sequence of funds in collaboration with other opportunities. Go to the next slide, please. So this is just a visual to help you understand the phasing of the Industrial Energy Transformation Fund. So the £315 million that was announced in the 2018 budget is the overall amount of money that's available until 2024 to spend across the UK to help industry to decarbonise and use less energy. We have agreed with the Scottish Government that they will take £26 million of that budget, and they will be running their own scheme. The Scottish IETF is due to be announced later in the year. So there is money available if you're interested in applying for a project in Scotland, but the process for that will flow through the Scottish Government. So the money that we're talking about today, which BEIS is managing and is being distributed through Innovate UK's support, is available for England, Wales and Northern Ireland. So the value of phase one is £30 million, and that opens for applications today, and the application window closes on the 28th of October. We will be keeping that closing date under review due to the COVID situation, but we do plan to close on that date unless something extremely unusual happens, but we are tracking that situation as many other parts of government obviously are. So the budget for 30 million is for two different types of projects. One could be deployment projects and one could be studies. And when you look online, you'll find there's two different portals to give you information about deployment and studies. For the deployment projects, in phase one, it is only open for energy efficiency projects. When we move to phase two, which opens next year with the remainder of the funding, that will open for energy efficiency and deep decarbonisation projects. When we're talking about studies, in phase one and phase two, we're interested in proposals for both energy efficiency and deep decarbonisation in both waves. So the idea is that the studies that people are looking to fund in phase one will hopefully be building a pipeline for some viable projects that could then apply for deployment funding in phase two. We'll move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So just a little bit of an overview on the funding details, and there'll be a lot more information about this through the presentations that follow. So the IETF funding is for capital grants for deployment projects, and as I mentioned, these are only for energy efficiency projects in phase one. Deep decarbonisation will follow in phase two. We're also providing grant funding for feasibility and engineering studies, as I've mentioned. Funding for phase one will need to operate under EU state aid rules. These are documented online. They're fairly complex, so I won't go into them now. There is a presentation later that will go into those, but we would recommend you take advice to make sure you've understood the state aid rules properly for your organisation. All grants will need to be match funded. The scale of the match funding depends on a variety of factors, including state aid. So again, I'd recommend that you look into that yourselves to find the right support and find out how much you would need to fund. Innovate UK are available to help you with any questions around that. The Industrial Energy Transformation Fund does not support operating costs. It's only capital grants. Importantly, if any of you were involved in our consultation last year, and I know a lot of organisations did participate in that, for which we're very grateful, really helped us improve the scheme design as far as we possibly could. We have made some changes to the proposals that we made in our consultation. The most significant one, I believe, would be the actual value of funding we would provide. We had proposed that the minimum threshold for the grant you could receive from us was going to be £1 million. And we did receive a lot of feedback suggesting that that was perhaps the wrong figure. So we have launched a scheme with a much lower threshold, and the threshold is actually £250,000 for a deployment scheme. It's a different value for the studies. So again, that information will be covered shortly. But we did make quite a number of changes, and for that we're very grateful for all the participation we got during the consultation. It really helped us strengthen the design of the scheme. Okay, if I can have the next slide, thank you. So just finally, I thought it was worth pausing to cover some issues around eligibility, and this is really looking at the scope of the fund. So we did receive a lot of questions last week in the webinar last week around whether certain projects could be funded, and as Jenny has just said, it's probably much easier to tackle those questions in a one-to-one environment. It's not always easy to answer a question whether something's eligible on a few words describing the scheme. So we'd strongly encourage you to contact the eligibility screening service if you want to understand if your project is within scope. But just to give you an overview, there were a number of decisions that we've made in the design of this fund, which I'll just give you the overarching principles that sat behind those. It is worth clarifying that the eligibility rules for phase 1 do differ between deployment projects and studies. So I would recommend that you make sure you're looking at the right guidance, whether it's deployment or studies, when you're studying eligibility rules. The reason for this is that phase 1 is for energy efficiency only, whereas studies can include deep decarbonisation and energy efficiency. So there's basically 4 principles that sat behind all of our eligibility decisions. The first is that projects need to demonstrate that they're going to reduce energy use and carbon emissions from industrial processes. We're very much focused on targeting the industrial process. As to the extent of the energy reduction and the carbon emission reduction, they will be assessed through assessment criteria, but you can only apply if you're actually talking about an industrial process. Secondly, we want to make sure that we're funding schemes that completely align with our net zero goal for 2050. So we need to be really sure when people are applying that that is on a pathway towards net zero. We need the scale of step change that I've been describing to be confident that we will actually be locking in technologies that will be fit for the future. The fund is technology neutral, and you may see some reference to certain technologies being out of scope. That is largely because of the deployment studies for phase 1 being focused on energy efficiency only. But we do aim to take a technology neutral approach. We believe that the best people to know which technologies are going to work are the industries promoting those technologies themselves. And finally, it's in the name, it's a transformation fund. We do aim to support projects where this is the only place where funding will make a difference. We don't intend to support projects where there's already another government fund for those projects, and we don't intend to fund initiatives where there's already an established market. We really do want this large, but in some ways small amount of funding to be truly transformative. So we need to make sure that we're making the right investment decisions. And for that reason, some things may be out of scope, simply because there may be another fund that you could apply to, or where the market is already strong enough to not need government support. So I'll just stress again, the eligibility screening service is available to help any of your questions around whether you're in or out of scope for the fund. And I'd strongly encourage everybody who has any questions to follow up with Innovate UK after today to find out more. I believe that's the last of my slides. Thank you very much. I am disappointed not to be able to see all your faces, but I hope that's been helpful, and I look forward to any questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Tricia. That was great. Okay, so now we'll move on to Julia Schumacher from Innovate UK to take us through the scope of the 2 competitions. Julia.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you, Tricia. Hello, everyone. So yes, welcome to the Industrial Energy Transformation Fund briefing webinar today. And it's great to see such a spread and diversity of businesses who've actually signed up today. So my name is Julia Schumacher, and I'm the lead for IETF at Innovate UK. And I'm going to spend the next sort of 15 minutes or so talking through with you the sort of overview of the competition, and also looking at the scope requirements to help you gauge whether or not any projects you have in mind could indeed be eligible. So just moving on. Great. Okay, so as Tricia mentioned, there are 2 phases of the IETF fund, and today we're going to be focusing on the first phase, which is actually open for applications right now. So again, the objectives of phase 1 is to help energy intensive companies to cut their energy bills and reduce their greenhouse gas emissions through increased energy efficiency and decarbonisation. So the fund is open to companies in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. And the SIC codes that are eligible for the fund are manufacturing 10 to 33 and data centres 63110. So I wanted to just take the opportunity to go through with you some of the detail of how the funding is broken down in order to achieve the objectives that have been set. So IETF is broken down into 3 elements really. The first element, which is the deployment strand of IETF, this enables companies to deploy mature energy efficient technologies that improve the energy efficiency and reduce energy demand of an industrial process. So the minimum grant that you can apply for in this strand is £250,000 for the deployment project, and projects can last up to 24 months. The next 2 elements, which is the second strand, if you like, of IETF, fall under the studies. And these are broken down into the feasibility and the engineering studies. So both feasibility and engineering studies enable companies to determine the benefits of deploying a mature energy efficient technology or a deep decarbonisation. And this is really about helping companies very much to get ready. So the minimum eligible project cost for a feasibility study is £60,000 and projects can last up to 12 months. And the minimum eligible project cost for engineering studies is £100,000 and projects can last up to 24 months. So the intervention rates that apply for the grants will vary depending on your business size and in some cases the location of your business, but this will be covered a little bit later. And it's important to stress that we are looking to fund a portfolio approach of projects. So we'll be ensuring that there is a really good spread across geographical areas, technologies, industrial sectors, organisation types, project sizes, etc. So now I'm going to talk through some of the scope requirements for the first strand, so for the deployment projects. So grants in the deployment strand are aimed at projects that will improve the energy efficiency of an industrial process. And this focuses on technologies that are TRL 8 and above. So they've been proven to work or qualified through test or demonstration. So it is important to emphasise that the deployment is about mature energy efficient technologies and the fund isn't about supporting innovation or R&D development. Some examples of energy efficient technologies include improved process control. So that would be looking at the energy usage of machinery and the processes and how this can be reduced. More efficient heat exchange, more efficient drying, energy recovery from waste heat and waste pressure, and also resource process optimization. So this is looking at reduced wastage of raw materials, optimization of production lines, that sort of thing. So as mentioned before, the deployment projects can last up to 2 years, but beneficiaries will be required to submit data up to 5 years after that 2-year period has ended. And the reason for this is because it's really important that IETF does make a measurable impact in moving towards a low carbon future. And we can only monitor the impact of the fund if we can capture the data from the project. So please do certainly bear that in mind. So a few key points to note regarding your application. You do need to show the energy saving before and after implementation, and there is a great calculator tool that's available to you to help with all of these calculations. The energy savings must be measured at the site where the project will take place. And again, TRL 8 and above for the technology that you are looking to deploy. There are some projects that are out of scope for deployment, and you can see these here. So repair and maintenance, plant closures, energy efficiency measures in transport, building heating, cooling. Electricity generation from renewables is out of scope. However, electricity generation using waste heat, waste pressure or gas, etc. is in scope. And the reason for not supporting the electricity generation from renewables is because there are other government schemes available in this area. So if you are indeed interested, then please do get in touch and we can certainly help signpost you. Production of hydrogen fuels, biogas and biofuels is out of scope. Waste heat recovery from plants and production processes that are not already in use is out of scope, unless of course it is a retrofit solution, in which case it would mean it was in scope. And combined heat and power projects are out of scope for the deployment strand, but they are covered under the study strand of IETF, which I will go through a little bit later. Fuel switching, again, is in scope, providing it is switching to a fuel that is less carbon intensive. So you can just see here, so fossil fuels more carbon intensive than the gas grid can be switched to the gas grid, and any fuel can be switched to grid electricity or electricity produced on site using renewable sources. So now just to talk through some more details of the scope requirements for the feasibility and the engineering studies. So IETF can provide grants to help companies get ready for the deployment element. So get ready to deploy the future projects through the engineering or feasibility studies, and then that is looking at either energy efficiency or decarbonising technology. So just to outline, first of all, what we mean by the two different studies. So feasibility studies, these can last up to 12 months, as I mentioned earlier, minimum project cost of £60,000. And these must investigate the commercial viability of technologies that improve energy efficiency or reduce greenhouse gas reduction. So it's very important that this focuses around a specific industrial process that you are looking to implement. An engineering study is much more detailed. This lasts up to 24 months with a minimum project cost of £100,000. And this must be a technically detailed project plan, and it must include the elements that we've outlined here. So it must identify specific technical requirements, summarise many separate studies carried out by different specialists, and also be a multidisciplinary engineering design focusing on key design features and project cost estimates. So as mentioned, the engineering and the feasibility studies can focus on one of two themes, so either energy efficiency or decarbonisation. So looking at the scope of the energy efficiency element first, the same requirements here apply as we touched on with the deployment project. So the study must show proposed energy savings before and after implementation, and the technology must be TRL 8 and above. And now looking at the scope of the deep decarbonisation studies. So first of all, just to clarify exactly what we mean by deep decarbonisation. So projects must show a real step change in the reduction of their greenhouse gas emissions. So it's about the significance of that reduction related to the industrial process. And decarbonisation technologies can be TRL 7 and above, so this is lower than the other strands, and this means the technology can be at prototype stage or requiring demonstration, as well as proven to work or qualified through test. So just to talk through some examples. So biomass. So there are some exceptions around the biomass projects. So biomass will only be supported where fuel switching to solid biomass from solid fossil fuels or from other fossil fuels in high temperature applications, where biogas combustion or biogas combined heat and power projects are off the national or regional gas grid, and where the biomass fuel used delivers benefits through greenhouse gas emission reductions that do not lead to an increase in adverse environmental impacts such as air pollution. Moving on to another example now, so fuel switching. Fuel switching, there are a few conditions around this, so it must be focused on switching to a less carbon intensive fuel than originally used, and the new fuel must not be of higher carbon intensity than that of the national gas grid. So you can see here, you can switch from fossil fuels to biomass, waste or hydrogen, fossil fuels more carbon intensive than the gas grid to the gas grid, or any fuel to grid electricity or electricity produced on site using renewable sources. Combined heat and power, another example, again, of a deep decarbonising project, as long as it involves fuel switching. If the site is off-grid, then further eligibility checks would be required. So we just ask that you get in touch. We can talk your project through with you. And carbon capture, utilisation and storage as a final example, but again, this must be directly related to an industrial process. So any studies that focus on the transportation or storage of CO2 would be out of scope, and there is a carbon capture and storage infrastructure fund available that, again, we're very happy to provide signposting to. So again, with all of these projects, we recognise that each and every one is very individual, and we're very happy to talk through with you on an individual basis whether or not your project would be indeed in scope or eligible. So thank you very much. I'm now going to pass back to Jenny.
Thank you, Julia. That was great. Okay, so now it's time for our first Q&A session. And we've had a few questions come through, but if anybody on YouTube, if you want to post a question about the two presentations that you've just seen, please do that in the chat box on YouTube and Jonathan will pass them over to me. So our first question to our presenters is from Simon. Sorry, Simon, it doesn't have your surname. Please, could you clarify if funding is only available for the SIC codes, manufacturing 10 to 33 and data centres 63110? So to be eligible to apply, do you have to be within one of these SIC codes?
Yes, so on the SIC codes, to be eligible, those are the ranges with manufacturing 10 to 33 and data centre 63110 for the lead applicant. Obviously, supporting partners wouldn't necessarily need to be in those SIC codes. Lovely. And I would just say, if you're not familiar with the SIC codes, there's quite a lot of description underneath each one, quite a lot of different sub-industries that fit under there, so it's worth going to have a look. Our next question is from Neil Harrison. Of the 26 million announced for the Scottish IETF, is the 20 million announced in the spring budget to support the distillery sector part of that budget, or is it additional funding? So Tricia, do you want to answer that one?
Sure, yes. Sorry, my video will be lagging again. I'm sorry about that. That'll come through before I've answered the question, but I hope everyone can hear me. Yes, it is separate funding. So the 20 million that was announced in the budget is one amount of money. The 26 million is coming out of the total 315 that I mentioned for the overall fund. So they are different sources. I would recommend contacting the Scottish Government for further information, because what we don't know is how they may choose to combine different funding streams for public access. We can't answer that, but I'd recommend contacting the Scottish Government if you've got a specific question. But in terms of pots of money, it's a different amount.
Mm-hmm. There's just great opportunities for manufacturing sectors at the moment. Our next question is from Jeremy Miller. Do commercial buildings, in terms of heating and domestic hot water, qualify as industry? I think he's asking, are they within those SIC codes? So heating and domestic hot water of commercial buildings, is that in scope? Julia, do you want to take that?
Yeah, so again, obviously in relation to the business, check the SIC codes. But in terms of IETF, any technologies related to the heating and cooling of a building would not be in scope. It needs to be related to an industrial process for it to be in scope and eligible.
Yeah, so it's not the site as a whole, it is just the industrial process that we're looking to support. Great. So any last questions from YouTube? Now's your chance to pop those into the chat box. We'll just wait for a minute to see if we get any new ones come through. Okay, so we have Stephen Carey. Can an RTO be a project lead in the competition? So research and technology organisation, can they lead the project?
I can take this one, Jenny. So for those who've not heard my voice yet on this webinar, my name's David Heitch from Innovate UK, and I've been working on the Industrial Energy Transformation Fund and the development of it. No, RTOs can't lead projects. They can be partners, and we're going to cover the restrictions or limitations on RTO partnerships later on, but they can be partners but not BEIS.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Tim Stringer. He knows that direct air capture is excluded from this fund, but he's wondering, will there be a separate fund for this type of development? That's probably one actually Tim will take offline. I'll get in touch with you separately about that. Our next question is Sarah Underwood. Could you please explain the level of match funding required for the technology implementation project? So the match funding for the deployment competition. What percentages of match funding?
Yeah, Jenny, I can do that one again. Maybe Sarah, just wait a bit for the second part of the presentations, because that will all be covered in there. The answer really is it depends on your project, the company size, where you're located, what type of project you're applying for. So it's a bit difficult to answer this. If it's not covered so that you understand it after the next presentation, then please do join a one-to-one and we can go through that in a bit more detail for you.
Thank you very much. Our next question, for a hydrogen fuel switching project, does there have to be an established hydrogen supply route already in place, or can a supply be assumed at this stage with the project focusing on the use of hydrogen on the industrial site?
So the production of hydrogen is not in scope for the competition. So, however, the use of hydrogen, if it's been established in an industrial process as far as fuel switching goes, then would be in scope.
So it sounds like that will be fine. If they don't already have a supply of hydrogen nearby, they can still apply to this to get their industrial site ready for hydrogen.
Yeah, but I think in terms of the fund is not designed to support the infrastructure of it. So it wouldn't be able to support the actual infrastructure requirements to get the hydrogen to the site.
Yeah.
That would be out of scope.
Lily, did you
want to add to that?
Yeah, just perhaps to add to that. So hi everyone, I'm Lily from BEIS. So technically, yes, definitely that would be eligible for the studies portion. I think when it comes to understanding whether or not the supply will be there in future, that's possibly something that you might want to record within the risks section of the application, and to explain how you think those emission savings will be achieved in future through that supply. But definitely that does sound like something that would be in scope.
Thank you very much. Next one is solar thermal permitted as part of a project?
Again, it would need to, the fund is not, the solar thermal would need to be in direct relation to the industrial process and demonstrating how it improves the energy efficiency for it to be in scope.
Lovely, thank you very much. And the next question is, would heat transfer from an industrial process into a commercial building count? So I guess heat recovery from the industrial site to be used on a commercial building, but they don't say whether that building's on site or not. This is getting a little bit project idea-y, I think, on this one.
Yeah, and it does need, we would need to know where it would need to be in relation to the industrial process and not just supporting the site itself.
Yeah, okay. And Kurosh as well, don't worry, I haven't forgotten your question, but as the next presentation will probably answer that question, I'm going to leave you to the next Q&A. But the next question from Mike Ward is the deployment competition limited to new technology, or does a retrofit of existing commercial technology qualify?
Yes, I think on the retrofit it would qualify, but again, without sounding like a set record, they just need to demonstrate it is relation to that particular industrial process.
I think the question is more about, is this innovation or can we use off-the-shelf technology in the project?
Well, it probably comes down to the TRL level. So yes, we're not funding innovation and R&D, so it would need to be TRL 8 for the deployment.
Thank you very much, Julia. Any final questions from YouTube?
If I can just come back to an earlier question, there was a question about direct air capture. There was an announcement in the summer budget of £100 million to invest in direct air capture. So that's been covered through a different funding stream. So I'd recommend following up online about that. So if that's helpful.
And I'm supporting on that, which is why I was suggesting to come and have a chat. I think that's the end of our questions for this session. So thank you very much to our presenters from Julia and Tricia. We'll now move on to the kind of nitty-gritty of actually applying to the competition. And we have Rachel Evans and Victoria Meredith from Innovate UK that are going to take you through. They're going to do a bit of a double act. So I'll hand over to Rachel.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jenny. We'll go through everything to do with the two competitions and hopefully go through all of those questions that were asked regarding the match funding and all the nitty-gritty bits like that. So on the call today, what we'll run you through is some welcome introductions of who's on the call, the scope, eligibility criteria. We'll then go through the Innovation Funding Service, application finances and academic partners, and then we'll go through finally submitting your application, the assessment process, and then project setup for those that are successful. So firstly, the eligibility criteria. So both the competitions we are discussing today, they do allow for resubmissions. So Innovate classes a resubmission as an application not materially different from one you submitted before. So your application is classified as a resubmission if it was previously deemed out of scope for another competition. However, if you were previously ineligible, for example, having project costs over the funding limits, this wouldn't be deemed as a resubmission. So the types of organisations we fund are listed on the page here. So this slide shows the types of organisations that Innovate UK fund and that will be funded within the two competitions we're running. The type of funding that you will receive does depend on the type of organisation, which we'll cover later on in the slides. So for the IETF deployment of energy efficiency technologies in industry, for this competition, project costs can be up to 250,000 and can be 24 months in length. And to lead a project, you must be registered in England, Wales or Northern Ireland. You must carry out your project in England, Wales or Northern Ireland, and you must exploit the results, again, from within England, Wales or Northern Ireland. So this competition will be run under State Aid Article 38. And so more information on Article 38 is available both on our website and on this slide. So please make sure that you have a look back through these slides when they're made available to you, just so that you can get a bit more information regarding the article. So moving on to the IETF Industrial Energy Efficiency and Decarbonisation Study Competition. So for this competition, the total eligible project costs for experimental development must be at least 100,000, and for feasibility studies, they must be at least 60,000. Your project must last up to 12 months for the feasibility studies and last up to 24 months if it is an experimental development. And again, to lead a project, you must be an England, Wales or Northern Ireland based business. You must carry out your project in England, Wales or Northern Ireland, and again, exploit the results from within England, Wales or Northern Ireland. So for this competition, it will be run under Article 25. And again, there's more information on this slide and on our website. So again, please feel free to look back through the slides and have a look online just to get some more information about the state aid article. If you're unsure whether you're eligible for state aid, please get in touch with our customer support team prior to applying for the competitions. So please remember that at least 70% of total eligible project costs must be incurred by a business. If you have an academic or RTO in your consortium, the maximum level of project cost is 30%. If there is more than one, they would share the 30% between them. So To be eligible to receive state aid, you must pass the Undertakings in Difficulty test. This only applies to limited liability companies that are more than 3 years old. So if you have a parent company, the test can be performed on your parent or holding company. So it is your responsibility to make sure that your business is eligible before you submit an application, as said before. And if you are successful in the competition, we will apply this test as part of our viability checks. So a little bit about collaboration. In all collaborative projects, there must be at least 2 organisations claiming grant within the applications, and this does include the lead. A business or RTO-led consortium, which may involve both business and research-based and evidence of collaboration. So it's really important to remember that there must be evidence of a genuine collaboration. You'll need to explain in your application how all your parties will contribute to the project and benefit from the collaboration. So this slide just shows you some key dates to keep in mind for this competition. So please note that the submission deadline is at 11 AM on the dot, on the closing date of the 28th of October. IFS will automatically close, and so at 11:01 applications can't be submitted. So we do strongly recommend that you submit your application early, as early as possible, as traffic will be high on deadline day. If you are having issues with submission, please contact customer support in good time of this deadline so that they can help you. So just to run you through the Innovation Funding Service, also known as IFS. So you'll have to search for a funding competition and review the criteria. So when you click apply on the competition web page, you are directed here. So use the keyword search to find the competition you are interested in. Click the title to open the competition, where you will see a tabbed view of the eligibility criteria, scope, key dates, and information on how to apply. And when you're happy to apply, simply click the Start New Application button at the top of the screen. So to apply for a competition, the lead applicant will need to create an account. If you've applied to previous competitions on IFS, you can simply sign in. You can use your company's house lookup to search for your organisation to save typing in the name and address. If you're not on company's house, you can manually enter all of your information as well. And we recommend that research organisations and academics manually enter your information so that you are not listed as a business, and this ensures that you'll get the correct level of funding. So the first section of your application will cover the project details. These include the application details, the project summary, the public description, the scope, and some additional information. Again, if you come back and look through these slides, there's a bit of more detailed information, and there's further information on IFS as well. So the application questions for the deployment of energy efficiency technologies in industry are listed on the screen here. Please note that questions 1, 2 and 6 all require an appendice that can be attached to the question. On the left hand side, you'll just see the weighting of the questions and how they'll be marked. So this is good to keep in mind when filling in your application. So these are the questions for the industrial energy efficiency and decarbonisation studies. Again, the weighting on the left hand side just shows how we will mark each question, and question 1, 2 and 3 on this competition all have appendices that can be added to the questions. So just to run you through the application finances. So labour costs enter the role within the project gross annual salary, the number of staff and the days to be spent on the project. IFS will calculate the total cost if you have multiple people in the same role on the same average salary. Enter this in the role within project field. If an employer is part-time, you should enter their costs as full-time equivalent. So you can adjust the working days per year from the default if this is different for your project. And please note that dividends, bonuses and non-productive time are not eligible as labour costs. So overheads. So we just define overheads as additional costs and operational expenses incurred directly as a result of the project. These could include additional costs for administrative staff, general IT, rent and utilities. So you have three options to calculate overheads. These are no overheads, 20% of labour costs, or calculate overheads. So we class indirect administration overheads as these costs associated with back office functions such as finance and HR, whose primary functions is to support the running of a business. They can only claim a portion of their time and their work needs to be additional to the delivery of the project. So capital use, equipment usage. Here you'll need to describe how you're using the equipment, whether it be new or existing, the new purchase cost, how long you are depreciating it over, and the residual value at the end. These calculations need to be in line with your accounting practices. So subcontractors, if this cost is going to be significant, you will need to justify who, why and what you need them for, both here and in your application. So it's important that you justify the use of subcontractors within your application, especially those that are non-UK based, and the assessors do not see this level of financial detail. They only see the total cost. So travel and subsistence, here you would include things such as essential meetings that need to happen during the project. You cannot include any sales and marketing activity as this is ineligible, and travel costs must be economy travel only. The other costs, please check the finance guide for what other costs can be included here. If you're unsure, please do not hesitate to contact the customer support team. And any other costs which don't fit into previous categories, for example, training directly attributed to the project, licensing new technologies, please ensure there is no double counting and all costs are justified. So as previously mentioned, the level of funding awarded will depend on the type of organisation and the type of research being undertaken in the project. IFS will calculate your grant percentage based on your answers inputted. So as part of the new laws within the state aid scheme, we are required to ask you whether the activities you plan to undertake will be economic or non-economic for this project. This applies to all organisations types. We will affect the amount you are able to claim and is a requirement to every competition, even on multiple applications. So this table here shows the grant percentage rate for the IETF Industrial Energy Efficiency and Decarbonisation Studies competitions. I do recommend that you have a look through this slide in detail as it shows you the exact percentages that you're able to claim and gives you a bit more information that you'll be looking at. These slides will be sent on to you and available, all the information will be available via IFS. So on the previous slide, there's some talk of effective collaboration and wide dissemination. This slide just talks you through the exact description of this so that you can relate to it. So again, I just recommend just going through this slide so that you can make your application correctly. So this slide shows the grant percentage rates for the deployment of energy efficiency technologies in industry competition. Again, I really would recommend having a detailed look through this slide just so that you're aware of the percentages that you're looking to get grants for within your application. So this slide here just shows a consortium example, and it's based on a CR&D project for industrial research. So this is just an example, but it's very good to see what how it would look like when you claim. So now I'm going to hand over to my colleague Vicky, who will talk you through the next section of the presentation.
Great, thank you, Rachel. Okay, so academic partners in your consortium will need to complete a JES form, which they should already be familiar with. So the JES form validates costs for us. So please do note that Innovate UK don't have access to the GES system to extract the information ourselves. So this is why it needs to be sent to us. So when they've completed their GES form, academics will need to include their unique reference number on IFS and input their figures. So please ensure the figures that you provide are identical. The form must be with council status and uploaded onto IFS as a PDF document. Okay, so now I'm just going to go through a bit of information regarding submitting your application. So this is a summary of the project costs available to all organisations in the project. So you will not be able to see any more detail or breakdowns of anybody else's costs. This is also what the assessors will see as well. Okay, so for collaborative applications, IFS will highlight to the lead applicant any partners who have outstanding project finances to complete. So all finances must be included in the application before the lead applicant can submit. It will also check that your research participation costs are within the required limits. Please note, IFS does not validate project costs, so it is your responsibility to ensure that all costs are within the eligible total project costs as stated in the guidance. So this slide is just giving a bit of an example that we do track the site usage and submission uploads. So this table just shows a number of applicants submitting their proposals each hour leading up to the 11 AM deadline. So as you can see, the majority of applicants leave it to the final hours, and we do strongly recommend submitting your application as early as possible in good time, really just to avoid any last minute technical issues. Okay, so I'm just going to move on to the application assessment. So the application is assessed, which involves a scope check, then review by independent assessors. So assessors tell us that they want clarity, detail, justification, and to see that the applicant has presented a viable opportunity for growth and an existing innovation where public funding will make a real difference to developing their idea. They want to have the right people with the right approach to run a successful project and exploit the results. So please do answer the questions in the guidance so the assessor can award you with the maximum marks. Even if you have a fantastic idea, if you don't answer the questions, you won't be scored very well. Make sure your application reads well. You want to keep the assessors engaged and interested in your proposal and really to get them excited about your idea. They could be reading a lot of applications, so yeah, really make yours stand out. Okay, so this slide is just showing some notes on feedback. So the feedback is compiled using the written comments of the independent assessors who review and assess the applications. It is intended to be constructive. Please bear in mind that because applications are assessed by a number of assessors, you may receive some information which appears to be conflicting. It must also be noted that some proposals may appear to be favourably assessed, so based on their comments. In such instances, it could be that your proposal simply fell below the funding threshold, with others achieving a higher merit overall. And just a little bit also in regards to the scoring, so we review the scores and feedback to check that assessors are adhering to our guidelines and score them fairly. So in some cases where we feel the score is unjust and not supported by feedback, we may remove that score as an outlier. If outliers are removed, we are unable to reflect this change in the scores, so you receive as part of your feedback due to this decision being completed outside of the system. So this is an example of a panel sheet, and this is the sheet that is created when we have all the assessments in. So you can see the right-hand column shows the score of a particular applicant, and highlighted columns shows the score spread. So this is the difference between the top and bottom scores. The next two columns let us know whether an application has been marked out of scope or not recommended for funding. There is a 3 or more appear in either two columns count for the no scope or recommended, and then we review the application's detailed scores and feedback to check why this has happened, and just to check that it is justified. So the green boxes here is a particular assessor score. The purple box highlights a set of scores for a particular question. So we look for a difference of 20 or more within the assessor's total score to identify the outlier. At first glimpse, you would consider assessor 3 to be an outlier with a score of 62, but this must be also backed up by their feedback. So the lead will be notified when your feedback is available, and they would just need to simply go onto IFS dashboard to view the feedback. Okay, so now I'm going to go through the project setup. So there are the project setup stages here that need to be completed by all partners within 30 days. So you can start project setup as soon as you've been notified that you are successful, and projects should start within 90 days. We no longer issue a conditional offer letter after notification, as organisations are signing up to our terms and conditions when you actually submit your application. So the lead has visibility of the progress for all partners, and so has responsibility for pushing those through. The lead will need to provide also a collaboration agreement and exploitation plan. Each partner should also provide their bank details and finance contracts. So just in regards to the project team, each organisation can add new people into the project to be listed as either finance contact or project manager. Individuals can allocate themselves and take on both roles if they choose to, but applicants will only be able to invite people from the organisation to join the project. So we will assign you a monitoring officer who will be your main point of contact throughout the project. We also review your finances to check the costs are eligible and businesses involved are legal entities and can meet their match funding requirements. Okay, so a little bit more in regards to project setup. So all project partners will be required to complete project setup, and we will require you to provide key information relating to your project and consortium. So just to avoid any delays, we recommend that you consider who will be the project manager, who will the finance contact for each consortium member be, and how will your consortium be set up. So we frequently see that projects get held up due to the collaboration agreement. So do start thinking about this whilst you are creating your application. On the slide are a few key areas that will need to be agreed amongst your consortium. We are unable to issue you your grant offer letter without it. So if you are successful and start your project with grant funding, you will need to be aware of the fact that we pay our claims quarterly in arrears. So if you are a small business, if you're a small organisation, please be wise to manage your cash flow. This can stretch small companies out, as some projects can incur significant costs up front. So the pattern of the claim payments can impact on cash flow as paid quarterly in arrears. Just one more thing to bear in mind, that all all costs have to be incurred and paid between the start and the end date of the project. And so you cannot claim any costs before the project has received confirmation to start or after it has finished. So just on this slide, we just have some contact details for our customer services support team, the KTN, and also our website. So I think now we will move on to the Q&A. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to let us know. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victoria, and to Rachel as well. So yes, we have our next Q&A session, and a few questions have already come through, but if anybody else has questions on YouTube land, please do pop them in the chat box. This is your last chance now to ask questions of any of the speakers that you've seen present this morning. So our first question is back to Kurosh. If a company is originally registered in the UK, but currently has 51% of the shareholders out of the UK in the EU, is this still eligible to participate? So they are registered in the UK, but most of their shareholders are European. Would somebody like to answer that one?
Yeah, Jenny, I can take that one.
Thank you.
So the company, there has to be a registered business in England, Wales, or Northern Ireland. And if so, it doesn't really matter the shareholding of that, as long as the company is registered in one of those countries and the work is being undertaken within England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, then it would be eligible.
That's lovely, thank you. Next question from Rebecca Wood. Can the capital grant eligible cost be explained again? So for deployment projects, is it only depreciation of capital expenditure during the project lifetime, which is an eligible cost?
Yes, I believe that is correct. David, could I just ask for your confirmation of that, please?
Yeah, so that's certainly correct for Article 25. I can't really speak for Article 38. I'm not a state aid expert, so I need to check on that. And possibly, who was it asked the question?
Rebecca Wood.
Rebecca, maybe the best thing to do is post a question through the Innovate UK support desk so we can get you a firm answer on that one.
Lovely, and I'll be putting that email for that support desk during my presentation later on this morning. Our next question is from Rob Spamer. Is the fund specific to one site, or could we apply for a project that would cover multiple sites?
So yeah, I'll take that one. So they can apply for multiple projects at a particular site within the application. But if they have other sites of a different postcode where they want to run similar projects, then they would need to apply a separate application for each.
So one application per site?
Per site.
Lovely. But you can have multiple projects on one site?
Correct, within that postcode, yes.
Great, thank you very much. And our next question is from Paul M. A further SIC code question. If the headline company SIC code, is that the sole determinant of eligibility? I.e., could a telecoms business that owns and operates a data centre, can they apply for a project at the data centre even if their SIC code isn't the one that we've given?
I'll take that. So, Paul, that's a really good question, and that's something that is probably best again to take through the support desks. So a little bit more information on the structure of that would help us to answer that with certainty. I don't want to mislead you at this stage. Sorry to not give you a firm answer now, but maybe best to go to the support desk.
Okay, thank you, David. Another one. Oh, sorry. Oh, I thought we had a question, but it looks like it's gone. So that moved into answered. Simon Pine, for deployment, would a project meriting 50% funding require a total project cost of 500k, i.e. 250k to be grant funded? So for deployment, I guess he's asking, is it 50% grant and 50% match funding?
I'll answer that, because it's not that it's necessarily 50%. I think Simon is giving an example if it were to be 50%.
Yeah.
To clarify, the minimum grant value is £250,000 for a deployment project. That doesn't necessarily mean that the total project cost to be 500,000, because it depends on the nature of the application, what the match funding requirement would be, and that would be a variety of answers depending on the nature of the applicant. But the minimum value that we will give in a grant for deployment is 250,000. The figures are different for studies, so I'd refer people to the studies guidance. That was also in the slides earlier.
Thank you, Tricia. That was great. See if we have any more. So any further questions? We'll just wait a couple of minutes to see if any more come through from YouTube. As I said before, this is your last chance to ask a question during the webinar. But if you do think of anything later, you can book a one-to-one with the funders. And I think that is the last question coming through. Yeah, I think that's going to be it. Okay, so thank you all to our four presenters even this morning. Thank you very much. And for everybody for answering the questions that have come through from YouTube. We're now due to go to a break. We are quite early, so we were going to come back at 12. I think given that we are finishing quite early, we will come back at 11:45. So you've got plenty of time, a good half an hour, to go on to our Meeting Mojo networking platform to meet some of the other delegates at the event today, and also people that were on last week's briefing event too. So to join Meeting Mojo, you will have been sent a code, which is on there, the URL on the slide now. That came through with your confirmation of joining this event today. So if you haven't registered already and you want to join the networking platform, please go to that link and register. It will ask you some very short questions about what you have to offer this competition in terms of skill and expertise, and what you're looking for in terms of finding partners to work with. Once you've completed the registration, a login will be sent to you so that you can get into the Meeting Mojo platform. So the very first thing you should do to make sure that people can find you is to complete your profile. So by clicking on your account, you can add a lot more information about yourself, particularly what type of organisation you are, whether you're a manufacturer, technology provider or delivery partner. That will then allow people to use the search filters on the network to find you. So do spend a little bit of time updating your profile when you get on there. We have over 230 people already in the networking platform that are interested in this program. So hopefully that will help you find a partner. We're also using this platform to allow you to book one-to-one meetings with the funders, as I said earlier. So from the end of the webinar, from 12:45 until 2:30, you can book a 10-minute chat with either BEIS, Innovate UK or myself to talk through your project ideas in more detail, or to ask any questions that come up that you think of over the break that you didn't get a chance to ask now rather. So that's it. So enjoy your comfort break, and we'll see you all back here at 11:45. Thank you. Everyone, welcome back from that short break. I hope you took an opportunity to join on the networking platform and had some conversations during that break. As I said earlier, we now have the opportunity to hear from 9 organisations that are hoping to get involved in the competitions, and they want to share their skills and expertise with you. So each company will be doing a 2-minute pitch of their interest in the competition and what they have to offer. And first up, we have Jake Gotham from Insight Technical Services. So Jake, take it away.
Right, hopefully you can all hear me. My name is Jake Gotham. I'm one of the directors of an engineering, project management and consultancy company called Insight Technical Services, based in beautiful Pembrokeshire in southwest Wales. We're active in the continuous process industries, so things like energy, oil and gas, metals, chemicals, and food, water, that sort of thing. My contact details are there, which hopefully you'll be able to get to after the event. So if we can go on to the next slide. We were asked, really, in the format we were given, to answer 4 questions about how we can help you. We can help with all sorts of things, but really in the context of today's discussion, recovery and reuse of waste heat from within the process is something we can certainly help with. So that's energy efficiency improvements, or if you have conventional steam generation, looking at replacing that with cogeneration. It's important to remember, really, that recovered energy is free energy. So for you, that's obviously savings on your energy bills. For everybody else, that's savings on carbon to the atmosphere. Something that has changed in recent years is that heat recovery can go uphill as well as downhill. Traditionally, heat recovery has been about taking high temperature heat and recovering it to low temperature uses. The opposite is now possible with various heat transformer technologies. We can help you evaluate that sort of thing. We can also help you look at third-party funding for cogeneration projects. So we can help in 2 ways. One is really with consultancy to identify and evaluate the opportunities that your company or your site might have, and then with engineering and project management to implement those solutions. So if you've got large heat and energy requirements at your operating site and you think that we can help them, then please get in touch. Thank you.
That was perfect. Thank you very much. And next up, we have John Baldwin from CNG. Over to you, John.
Hello, yes, my name's John Baldwin. I'm the Managing Director of CNG Services. And we're sort of niche EPC contractors in biomethane and bio-CNG for trucks. Our focus at the moment is on bio-CNG, and that is taking waste, making it into biomethane, injecting it into the gas grid, and then taking it out at the truck depot to run the trucks on and decarbonise the fleet. Next slide, please. Our specific idea here is that as a company that's spent sort of 20 years converting companies from oil to natural gas, we're now moving on to convert the same companies from natural gas to a combination of heat pumps to provide as much heat as we possibly can, and then backed up by biomethane delivered via the gas grid. There's a second thing we'd like to do, which was to use hydrogen, but that's the regime doesn't really work for that at the moment, but maybe in 5 years' time it would do. For industrial customers, we also think it's very important to, for ones that take gas already, are connected to the gas grid, look at the opportunity of converting their fleet, well, replacing their diesel trucks with bio-CNG ones, because they've already got the gas grid, they've invariably got electricity, so that are the key ingredients for bio-CNG. In terms of the innovation, I think it's the combination of heat pumps with biomethane backup. We've done this before for distilleries last year, where we take gas by road to distilleries that are not connected to the gas grid. And we've done that successfully, but we've used the gas oil in this case as a backup. We want to apply the same principle here, try and use heat pumps as far as possible to displace gas, and then back up using biomethane delivered via the grid. As I said before, existing gas customers can also take advantage of the grid connection to link to biomethane.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, John. And now moving on to our next speaker, we have Lisa Groves from Ricardo. I think you're still muted.
Sorry there.
That's okay. We'll start from there.
Cheers. So my name is Lisa Groves. I'm a principal consultant at Ricardo, which is a global engineering and environmental consultancy with over 100 years experience in creating engineering solutions. And we've really got a focus on what we see as creating a world that's fit for the future. So I work in the future energy systems area of Ricardo, where we support partners and clients in the delivery of transformational low carbon projects across many sectors of the UK market. And my contact details are on there along with my colleague, Nick Painter. Can we move to the next slide, please? Great. So as an overview of our services, Ricardo covers the full spectrum from policy regulation and strategy support through business case development, project development, and engineering, design and delivery. So as you can see, much of our expertise is directly related to the activities that sites might be looking to undertake as part of the Industrial Energy Transformation Fund. We've also worked with BEIS and other UK departments on setting the or calculating the UK greenhouse gas emissions factors for the last 20 plus years. So we've got some really detailed understanding of how you can reduce your carbon emissions. We've also spent about 30 years running similar government funding programmes, working alongside Innovate UK. So we've got a lot of experience in helping project leads to create and craft applications that are of really high quality and try to do the best to make sure that projects fulfil all of the requirements that are needed to achieve the award of funding. We're seeking partners and project leads essentially for the Industrial Energy Transformation Fund, similarly to the last two pictures. We're really looking to identify some sites that we can help support. And that's me.
Thank you very much, Lisa. So if anybody on YouTube is interested in talking to Jake, John or Lisa, then please find them on the networking platform so you can talk to them in a little bit more detail about how they could help your project. So we're moving on now to Mark Christensen from Reliagen Holdings.
Hello everyone, I'm Mark Christensen from Reliagen Holdings, which is looking at different ways to valorise waste heat to produce zero emissions, clean energy, and also integrate with transport solutions. So it's using a range of novel technologies, putting together to solve some of the challenges of where you get a decent payback on using waste heat of varying specifications and sources. So it's a bit of an optimization approach, but being quite bespoke to suit the site and bring in some other ways to create some value at the back end of that process, and linking to transport opportunities as well.
Next slide.
Yep. So the concept really is looking at a range of steam, waste heat, but also the genset recip engines, sources of heat as well, which are generally more efficient and modular for higher power efficiencies, depending on the site and what the requirement is for that particular sort of energy intensive application. So there's opportunities to look at new sites, to put in those sort of solutions, as well as bolting on the transport piece as well, where fleets of certain operators can then become more decarbonised ahead of the targets, and working out how to do that and optimise all the data around that, which is quite a complex piece, but that's something we're looking to offer services with and partner up with different suitable companies to do that. So obviously there's a lot of CO2 savings to be achieved from that, so we're looking to provide that key data as well for carbon accounting under the various regulations in the UK affecting the different companies. So we can provide a fully funded on-site system, just remote automated packages as well.
Thank you very much, Mark. And next we have Mitchell von Oosten from Naked Energy. And that's it.
Thanks very much, Jenny, and thanks to the other panelists. It's great to see some familiar names of colleagues that I worked with previously on the IHRS program, and I'm looking forward to working with some new colleagues as well within the IETF. My name is Mitchell van Oosten. I'm recently joined Naked Energy as a senior technical sales engineer. So Naked Energy is a BEIS-backed UK micro company. Our office is in Crawley, and we have a unique offering. If you could go to the next slide, please. So Virtue PVT is a high temperature photovoltaic thermothaler collector that can deliver simultaneous power and heat up to a design temperature of 100 degrees for process heating. We've successfully sold 55 kilowatt so far of pre-certified units and are beginning full commercial launch following achievement of solar key mark certification. We already have a pipeline of about 2 megawatt and are forecast to deploy 150 megawatt in the UK in 2021 to 24, provided everything goes to plan. So we're currently interested in taking part in projects by providing process heat to processes around that 100 degree mark, or to preheating processes at higher temperatures. The particular industries and SIC codes that we're interested in are listed there, and we're able to bring expertise across that design process, whether it's with regard to integration with other heat processes and technologies like heat pumps, etc. And we're looking for applicants, distributors, and installers to be a part of that process. Thanks.
That's great. Thank you very much. Okay, next up we have Neil Harrison from Reheat. I think you're on mute, Neil.
I am, yes. Sorry. Say good morning or good afternoon, but we're dead on 12, so we're kind of too. So thanks for the opportunity to speak. Just as a quick overview of our company, we're an SME. We're based in Northumberland, but we have offices on Speyside and Glasgow. We're about 10 years old, but the team have experience of 20, 25 years behind them in aspects of process engineering, bioenergy, and sort of practical project implementation. We specialise in bioenergy, but we do have an involvement as well in heat recovery. We're currently delivering an industrial heat recovery scheme program on a tarmac plant, looking at recovering heat there and exporting that off-site for sort of commercial gain and obviously improve their environmental profile. A few of our customers are on there. If you could advance the slides, please, that'd be great. We're particularly interested in high heat users and helping to help them decarbonise through a different range of different technologies, primarily renewable fuel substitution, and also those that are looking to take waste heat that they have from a process and do something with it, whether to improve the efficiency of the existing process, or, as I said about the earlier project, about exporting that off-site. There's some quite nice synergies with things like district heating support programs, industrial heat recovery between this and the IETF. We will typically work right the way through a project, from assessment at the front end through the design, through the economic modelling, and then helping to put together a package of technology and then to deliver that. We also have access to a range of different funding options that could be entirely funded by a third party, but we're very much more interested in getting the projects delivered rather than getting sort of too bogged down in trying to sell ESCO deals, that kind of thing. There's a range of different models that are suitable for different clients. Really, we think there's the opportunity there for everybody. We have an enormous hill to climb with decarbonising heat, and lots of exciting new opportunities. Interested in some of the presentations you've seen now about new bits of technology. So hopefully we'll find customers who are interested in taking advantage of our services and expertise. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, so again, if you're interested in talking to Mark, Mitchell or Neil, then please go and find them on Meeting Mojo after the event so you can have a chat in more detail about how they can support you. And next up, we have Vasu Gadi from Siemens. I think you're on mute, Vasu. That's it.
Hi, Jenny, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Brilliant. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Vasu Gadi of Siemens UK, headquartered in the beautiful city of Manchester. We are a diverse group of people helping our customers across various sectors in the UK, including health, mobility, infrastructure, and energy. If you could move to the next slide, please, Jenny. Thank you. Cheers. Online and delivered in no time. It puts an enormous strain on companies' infrastructure. So to maintain competitiveness, companies need to adapt and innovate, that, and the data is going to be the backbone of that innovation. Being able to interpret data as we know, just digital chain we have to identify, qualify, and optimize potential areas of improvement within customers' entire ecosystem. So, by taking a holistic approach to balance energy supply and demand, and merging the virtual and real world using digital twins, we can better manage that complexity, essentially converting data into and at the end making sure customers can make informed decisions. So what's unique about it? We know energy efficiency and generation are two capabilities most companies do with separate them together and seamlessly integrate them. Use AI to use from a product system behavior tested long before the solution is implemented. And once the system is implemented and deployed, we can get insights from operations and feed that right back into
Stu, I'm really sorry
to help customers transition to net zero, simple and easy. If you, yeah.
That's it. I'm ever so sorry to interrupt, but the quality is quite poor on the line, so we're only getting about every fifth word. So we'll share your slides with everyone, but I think we might have to call the pitch to an end because it's very hard to understand. But I can see you've got some great information in your slides, so that should be useful to people. So next up we have Rob Ison from Glass Futures. Over to you, Rob.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting me to present today. So my name is Robert Ison. I work for Glass Futures. We're a research technology organisation that's looking to drive research and innovation across the glass sector. And at the heart of what we're doing is one of the main things we're looking to do is to build an industrial scale glass manufacturing pilot facility that can manufacture up to 30 tonnes of glass per day. The next slide, please, Jenny. We're basically interested in any technology that will help the glass sector improve its energy efficiency or reduce CO2 emissions. So we're working on a range of different technologies. One of the main areas we're looking at the moment is the area of alternative fuels to replace natural gas within glass melting. We're also interested in a whole range of other technologies, including furnace and digital control technologies, waste heat recovery technologies, but we're also open to any other technologies that might help the glass sector. One of our key strengths is that we have extensive networks across the glass manufacturers and the glass supply chain. So we have links with everyone from raw material suppliers, equipment suppliers, through to the manufacturers themselves and end users. We also have a huge amount of expertise in glass manufacturing. So if you have a technology, we can help identify where it might be deployed and how you might be able to integrate it into the glass manufacturing process. And we also have access to a whole range of lab-based test facilities as well. We're basically interested in anyone who has a technology they either want to develop for the glass sector or anyone who has a technology they might want to translate into the glass sector. So if that's you, please do get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. That was great. And last but not least, we have Niles Hornick from Energy Nest.
Thank you. Cheers. So my name is Niels Høvik. I'm stepping in for my colleague Steve Welburn. Energy Nest is a Norwegian technology company that has developed and proven the world's first commercial thermal battery to store and release thermal energy. And the global market for thermal batteries exceeds 300 billion euro by 2030, and with Europe constituting about 36 billion euro of that. And the UK is the second biggest market in terms of value in Europe. So next slide, please. Just as a lithium-ion or chemical battery has been transformative to the enormous growth of renewable power by allowing intermittent energy sources to store and release electricity at a different point in time, the thermal battery allows industrial facilities to store thermal energy to provide heat on demand, and thereby smoothing highly variable processes by acting as a buffer. So stored thermal energy can serve multiple purposes, such as preheating, steam production, or electricity generation. Energy-intensive industries such as metals, bricks, ceramics, chemicals, food, and beverage all stand to benefit from integrating this technology. Our thermal batteries are modular and easily deployed. It's made from abundant recyclable and non-hazardous geomaterials, namely steel and concrete. And unique design enables us to construct very compact energy storage systems with high energy density, small footprint, and very low energy losses. The thermal battery can be charged from a heat source with standard industrial heat transfer fluid or from steam directly. And its storing capacities range from about a few megawatt hours to gigawatt hours. And the ENGINEST thermal battery harvests wasted heat and various other renewable energy sources to render a wide variety of thermal services, for instance, process steam. The ENGINEST thermal battery is a unique and game-changing technology supporting energy systems in transition towards decarbonization. And we're currently executing projects in Austria, Italy, and the Netherlands.
And that's it. Thank you very much, Niles. So thank you all to our 9 pitches. They were all really interesting, and all of them, I hope, will be on the networking platform. So if you do want to go and work with any of those or to ask a few more questions, please do go and join the networking platform and engage with them on there. The last presentation now of the day is from myself, and it's just going to be a short presentation on how the KTN can help you with your application to these 2 competitions. So next slide, please. So first of all, we can help you to find partners. The networking platform, I've gone on and on about it today, but it really is probably the first place I would say to go to look for suitable companies to work with, or universities or RTOs or public sector people. We're encouraging everybody to get on board the networking platform and share their skills and expertise. So as I've said several times, if you haven't registered already, the link is there. You will be sent it later in the week as well with all the other information I'll tell you about in a moment. But once you get your login details, as I said earlier, it's really important that you go in and complete your profile. So fill in all the extra information that you can about your company, about your technology, about your manufacturing site, so that you can find each other when you do the search. So first of all, search on there. There's over 250 people now on there, and it's growing after today's event. So that would be a good place to find someone. If, however, you don't find your suitable partner on then come and see me. Drop me an email, and my email's on the next slide, to arrange a discussion. Just have a quick chat with me about what it is you are trying to do and what skill or expertise is that you're looking for. And we'll do our best to find you a suitable partner from the much wider KTN community. Next slide. The other way that we can help is to provide proposal advice. So if you want to first, particularly at this point, if you want to have an initial chat about your project ideas, you can either talk to me, and that's my email at the KTN. You can contact Innovate UK's eligibility checker helpline, so support@innovateuk.ukri.org, and put eligibility check in your subject line on your email so that they know it's about the IETF and it is an eligibility check that you want. That will help to process it faster. Or you can call the competition team, and their number is there for you to call them. They're available on weekdays, in the morning and afternoon, and they will then pass your questions on to the technical leads at Innovate UK to help you, particularly around, as I say, the eligibility checks. The other thing that we're doing for this particular programme, particularly because of COVID making things quite difficult to network, we're going to have fortnightly drop-in clinics. So these will just be an open forum Zoom call happening on a Monday morning every 2 weeks for you to come in and have a chat with BEIS, Innovate UK, or myself. That it's an open forum, so it's not in confidence like the one-to-ones will be. You'll be on there asking your question with everybody else. But it is a way that, you know, if there's something that comes up as you're starting to put your project together, and you just want to have a chat, and it happens to coincide when the drop-in clinic's on, then do come and join us in the Zoom room. There's a registration already open on the KTN website for the first drop-in clinic, which is taking place on the 3rd of August. So you can register so that you get the Zoom link sent out to you. And then finally, the other service that we offer at the KTN is proposal reviews. We do this for all of the Innovate UK competitions. It's a free service where we will give you constructive comments to help strengthen your bid before you submit it into the IFS system. So we know what the assessors will be looking for in the questions that are being put to you on the application form, and we can just give you some hints and tips on where we think the weak areas are to just bring your chance of success up a little bit. We can't tell you if your idea is the winning idea. That will be down to the assessors, but we can make sure that you've answered all the questions fully so you stand the best chance of being successful. So all of that is available to you from now until the competition closes at the end of October. So do get in touch if we can help in any way. And that is the end of, oh, sorry, forgot about Scottish. Scotland has come up a few times, so I just wanted to add on the email. So if your manufacturing site or your data centre is based in Scotland and you want to find out some more information from the Scottish Government about how it's going to be delivered, that 26 million, please drop them an email at ietf@gov.scot. That is the official email for their particular competition, and they'll be able to tell you when it will open and what it will involve. But we'll leave that on the slide, so you'll get that sent out to you after the event too. So I'd now like to hand over to Tricia to close the event for us. Tricia.
Thank you very much, Jenny, and thank you to all the speakers this morning. I hope it's been a useful morning for everybody who's been attending. I think we peaked at nearly 300 people at the busiest moment on today's session, and I think last week's session was more than that. So it's fantastic to know that there's a lot of interest in this fund. We really do want lots of fantastic applications. So just a few tips. I definitely recommend using the eligibility screening service. None of us wants anybody spending hours and hours and hours doing an application only to find out that it gets rejected because it wasn't eligible in the first place. So that's why we've set up the eligibility screening service with Innovate UK to make sure that any questions that you may have before you go into the effort of doing an application have been answered. So please do make good use of that service. And just on the application, Victoria mentioned a few things earlier that I thought were really worth stressing, because we're now handing over the process to everybody who's interested in writing an application. Application window opens today. So just a few tips. I've seen a lot of applications for government funding over the years, not quite as many as I've had hot dinners, but probably more than I've had holidays, I'm sure. And the real tip I'd say is treat it like a job application. Think about how you write. Make sure that what you write is as clear as possible, because your application will be read by various different people, and the clearer your application is, the more chance there is they'll actually be following what it is you want the money for. Make sure you answer the question. It sounds really obvious, but whatever the question is, make sure that you have actually addressed the issues that need to be covered in that section. And think about how you can tell a really convincing story, how you can bring your application to life, really engage the reader with what you're trying to sell for what you need some money for. And just finally, thinking about your evidence and your data, making sure that it's robust. We will obviously be making sure that any data around carbon savings and energy savings are robust and worth funding. So please do make sure the data is reliable. And throughout, I'd really stress checking the accuracy for everything you've written. I think the most amusing application I've ever seen was a request for a railway station upgrade where they wanted £4.95. They just put the decimal points in the wrong place, and I think they actually needed £495,000. Little things like that can make the world difference to the quality of your application. So just a few tips. Really very best of luck to everybody who wants to apply. Do please make good use of all those services that Jenny's just been describing, and we look forward to reviewing your applications later in the year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There'll be a link to this recording that we've made today and the slides from the presentation so that you can look through them as a guide as you're completing your application. We'll also send you a link to the competition page, which is where you click on to actually start your application. And there's a lot more information in there about scope and eligibility. If you haven't got on the networking platform by some miracle, we'll also send you a link to the networking platform. And finally, we'll also share the contact details for the application support service. So myself and Innovate UK's eligibility checker line, just to make it easy for you to be able to get in touch. So that is the end of today's webinar. Thank you all very much for joining us today. We hope you have found it interesting and useful. We look forward, as Tricia said, we look forward to receiving some really good quality applications from you and wish you the best of luck. If you are booked for a meeting with BEIS, Innovate UK or myself, then we'll move over to the Meeting Mojo platform and they start from 12:45. Thank you all very much. Goodbye.